Hey everyone, welcome back to a place where stories unfold like gentle waves washing over peaceful shores. Tonight, we're diving into something special, something that wraps around your heart like a warm blanket on a cold evening. If you're here looking for the kind of love story that makes you believe in magic again, you've found exactly what you need. Before we begin this journey together, take a moment to get comfortable. Adjust your pillows, dim those lights, and let the world outside fade away. Tonight belongs to Barry Allen and Iris West, two souls whose love story has captured hearts across dimensions. And if you find yourself drifting off before the end, well, that's exactly what we're here for. I'm genuinely curious about where you're tuning in from tonight. Drop a comment and let me know what time it is where you are. There's something beautiful about knowing we're all scattered across the globe, yet connected by the same story, the same longing for something pure and hopeful in a world that often feels anything but. You know, love stories have this incredible power. They remind us that beneath all the chaos and complexity of modern life, there's still something simple and true worth believing in. Barry and Iris represent that kind of love, the kind that doesn't need explosions or drama to be extraordinary. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the quietest ones, the ones that whisper rather than shout. What makes their story so special isn't just that Barry can run faster than lightning. It's that no matter how fast he moves, how many timelines he crosses, or how many worlds he saves, he always comes home to her. Iris West isn't just his anchor to humanity. She's his reminder that all the speed in the universe means nothing if you don't have someone to slow down for. Tonight we're exploring their love story the way it deserves to be told. Gently, honestly, and with all the warmth it contains. This isn't about superhero battles or cosmic threats. This is about two people who found each other in the most ordinary of places and created something extraordinary together. The story begins in Central City, a place where the impossible happens daily, but somehow still feels like home. Picture tree-lined streets where neighbors actually know each other's names, coffee shops where the barista remembers your order without being asked, libraries where afternoon light streams through tall windows, creating perfect reading nooks that seem designed for daydreaming. This is where Barry Allen grew up, in a house filled with more love than money, but somehow never lacking anything that truly mattered. His adoptive father, Joe West, was the kind of man who believed that being a good parent meant showing up every single day, no matter how tired you were or how heavy the world felt on your shoulders. Joe worked long hours as a detective, chasing down leads and solving cases that kept Central City safe. But no matter how late he came home, he always made time for bedtime stories. He'd sit on the edge of Barry's bed, his voice gentle in the darkness, spinning tales of heroes who didn't wear capes, but still managed to save the day through kindness and perseverance. Barry would listen with wide eyes, absorbing every word, never knowing that someday he'd become the kind of hero his father told stories about. But that night was still years away. For now, he was just a boy who loved science fiction novels and had a tendency to lose track of time when something captured his imagination. Across the hall, in a room decorated with journalism awards and photographs of far-off places, lived Iris West. Joe's daughter had dreams that stretched beyond Central City's borders. She wanted to tell stories that mattered, to shine light in dark corners, to give voice to those who couldn't speak for themselves. Even as a child, Iris had this incredible ability to see people clearly. Not just who they were in the moment, but who they could become. She saw potential where others saw problems. She found beauty in broken things and believed with absolute certainty that every story deserved to be told. Barry and Iris weren't related by blood, but they became something deeper than siblings. They were best friends who shared secrets under blanket forts. They were study partners who helped each other through algebra and awkward teenage years. They were confidants who could communicate entire conversations with just a look across the dinner table. Their childhood was painted in golden afternoons and lazy summer evenings. They'd spend hours at the park, Barry pushing Iris on the swings until she felt like she could touch the clouds. She'd dare him to climb higher in the old oak tree, then worry about him getting down safely. They collected fireflies in mason jars, making wishes on their gentle glow before setting them free. Joe would watch them from the porch, sipping coffee that had long gone cold, marveling at how naturally they fit together. Even then, he could see what they couldn't: the way Barry's face lit up whenever Iris entered a room, the way Iris unconsciously reached for Barry's hand whenever she felt uncertain. Love was growing between them like wildflowers, beautiful and unstoppable. School dances came and went. Barry would stand against the gymnasium wall, too nervous to ask anyone to dance, while Iris moved gracefully across the floor with various partners. But at the end of every song, she'd find her way back to him, breathless and laughing, asking if he wanted to get some punch or step outside for air. They'd sit on the school steps, watching stars peek through the city's gentle glow, talking about everything and nothing. Iris would share her dreams of becoming a journalist, of traveling to places where stories waited to be discovered. Barry would talk about forensic science, about using logic and evidence to solve puzzles that seemed impossible. Their conversations flowed like music, each thought building on the last, creating harmonies neither of them could have managed alone. They challenged each other's ideas, not to prove who was smarter, but to help each other grow. Iris taught Barry to see the human element in every scientific equation. Barry showed Iris how patience and careful observation could reveal truths that rushed judgment might miss. High school graduation arrived like sunrise, inevitable and bittersweet. They stood together in caps and gowns that made them look older than their years, ready to step into futures that would take them in different directions. Iris had been accepted to journalism school. Barry was headed to university to study forensic science. The night before they left for college, they climbed onto the roof of Joe's house, a tradition they'd started years earlier whenever big changes loomed. The city spread out below them, familiar and comforting, a constellation of memories they'd carry wherever life took them. Iris leaned against Barry's shoulder, and he could smell the vanilla shampoo she'd used since they were kids. Her hand found his in the darkness, fingers intertwining with the easy familiarity of two people who'd grown up sharing everything. They didn't talk much that night. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in silence, when hearts speak directly to each other, without the clumsy interference of words. They both knew something was shifting, that childhood was officially ending, and whatever came next would be different. But different didn't have to mean distant. Love has this remarkable ability to stretch across any distance, to remain constant even when everything else changes. Barry and Iris were about to learn that some connections run deeper than geography, stronger than time, more enduring than any force that might try to pull them apart. College letters arrived regularly, filled with stories of new experiences and growing dreams. Barry excelled in his studies, discovering a passion for forensic science that went beyond academic interest. He wanted to help people find answers, to bring closure to families who'd been left wondering, to ensure that justice wasn't just a word, but a living reality. Iris thrived in journalism school, her natural curiosity and empathy making her a standout among her peers. She wrote articles that made people think, that challenged assumptions, that reminded readers why truth mattered even when it was inconvenient or uncomfortable. They talked on the phone every Sunday evening, voices carrying across the miles that separated them. These conversations became the anchor point of their weeks, something constant and reliable in the midst of new experiences and changing circumstances. Barry would tell Iris about his laboratory work, the satisfaction of solving complex puzzles through careful analysis and patient observation. Iris would share stories from her internships, the thrill of uncovering information that could make a real difference in people's lives. Neither of them dated seriously during college. They told themselves they were too focused on their studies, too busy building their careers to worry about romance. But the truth was simpler and more complicated than that. How do you fall for someone new when your heart already knows exactly where it belongs? Years passed, like pages turning in a favorite book, each chapter bringing Barry and Iris closer to who they were meant to become. Barry graduated with honors, his professors noting not just his brilliant analytical mind, but his genuine desire to serve others. He returned to Central City with a job offer from the police department's forensic division, ready to turn his passion for science into a force for justice. Iris came home 6 months later, her journalism degree complemented by internships at newspapers across the country. She'd learned to ask the hard questions, to dig deeper when everyone else stopped looking, to find the human story buried beneath statistics and official statements. Central City's newspaper welcomed her with open arms, recognizing the kind of reporter who could make their publication matter. Living in the same city again felt like putting on a favorite sweater after a long winter. Comfortable, warm, exactly right. They fell back into old patterns effortlessly, meeting for coffee before work, sharing takeout dinners while discussing their days, finding excuses to spend time together that felt perfectly natural to everyone except them. Joe watched his children navigate this careful dance with the patience of someone who'd seen love bloom before. He noticed how Barry's eyes followed Iris when she wasn't looking, how Iris would unconsciously touch Barry's arm when making a point, how they both seemed more themselves when they were together. But timing, as any parent knows, can't be rushed. Love has its own schedule, its own rhythm that can't be hurried, no matter how obvious it seems to outside observers. Sometimes the most important realizations come not in moments of high drama, but in quiet instances, when the heart finally admits what it's always known. For Barry, that moment came on a Tuesday evening in late autumn. He was working late at the lab, analyzing evidence from a case that had stumped the department for weeks. The building was quiet, except for the hum of fluorescent lights and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. Iris appeared in his doorway, holding 2 cups of coffee from the shop downstairs, her coat damp from the light rain that had started falling, just as the sun disappeared behind the buildings. She'd been working late, too, chasing a story about city council corruption that required careful documentation and multiple source verification. She set 1 coffee cup next to his microscope and settled into the chair across from his desk, pulling her legs up beneath her in that way she'd done since childhood. They talked about their respective work, Barry explaining the forensic puzzle he was trying to solve, Iris describing the delicate process of investigating powerful people without alerting them to her scrutiny. The conversation meandered the way their best talks always did, touching on everything from scientific methodology to journalistic ethics to childhood memories that still made them laugh. Outside, the rain grew heavier, drumming against the laboratory windows in a rhythm that seemed designed for confidential conversations. It was sometime after midnight when Iris yawned and stretched, mentioning that she should probably head home. Barry offered to walk her to her car, a gentlemanly gesture he'd performed hundreds of times without thinking. But as they stood in the empty hallway, something shifted between them. Maybe it was the lateness of the hour, or the intimacy of being the only two people left in the building, or simply that they'd both grown tired of pretending their feelings were purely platonic. Whatever the catalyst, Barry found himself looking at Iris not as his best friend or adopted sister, but as the woman who'd quietly claimed his heart years ago without either of them acknowledging it. Iris must have sensed the change, because she paused in gathering her things, meeting his gaze with an expression that seemed to hold years of unspoken questions. They stood there in the fluorescent-lit hallway, two people who'd known each other their entire lives, suddenly seeing each other clearly for the first time. Barry opened his mouth to speak, then closed it again, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he wanted to say. How do you tell someone they've been your whole world without sounding like you're reciting lines from a romantic movie? How do you explain that every good thing that's ever happened to you has been better because they were there to share it? Iris saved him from his struggle with words by stepping closer, her hand finding his cheek with the gentle confidence of someone who'd been wanting to make that gesture for longer than she'd admitted to herself. Her touch was warm against his skin, familiar yet electric, carrying the weight of years of friendship and the promise of something deeper. They kissed in that empty hallway, with rain pattering against distant windows, a kiss that tasted like coffee and felt like coming home. It wasn't their first kiss, technically. There had been a brief, awkward moment under mistletoe when they were 16, quickly dismissed as holiday tradition rather than romantic gesture. But this was different. This was the kiss they'd been building toward their entire lives without realizing it. When they finally broke apart, both breathing unsteadily, Iris laughed softly and shook her head. "We're idiots," she whispered, her forehead resting against his. "Complete idiots for taking this long." Barry smiled, his hands finding her waist, anchoring himself to this moment that felt too perfect to be real. "Dad's going to say he told us so," he murmured, thinking of all the knowing looks Joe had given them over the years. "He's been waiting for this longer than we have," Iris agreed, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw with wonder, as if she couldn't quite believe she was allowed to touch him this way now. They stood there, holding each other in the empty building, rain washing the city clean outside, while something new and wonderful bloomed between them inside. Neither was in any hurry to leave, to break the spell of this perfect moment, when friendship transformed into something deeper, richer, more complete than either had imagined possible. The next morning brought sunlight and the slightly surreal feeling that comes after a dream becomes reality. Barry woke up in his apartment, wondering if the previous night had actually happened, or if his imagination had finally gotten the better of his rational mind. But then, his phone buzzed with a text from Iris. Nothing elaborate, just, "Good morning, you," followed by a heart emoji that made him grin like a teenager. They met for breakfast at their usual diner, the same booth they'd occupied countless times before. But everything felt different now. The way Iris's fingers brushed his when she passed him the sugar. The way Barry's eyes lingered on her face when she laughed at something the waitress said. The comfortable silences that now carried an undercurrent of anticipation. Other patrons probably didn't notice anything unusual. Two attractive young people sharing coffee and conversation, comfortable in each other's presence, the way longtime friends often are. But beneath the surface, everything had changed. They were learning to be best friends, and something more. Discovering that love didn't replace their friendship, but enhanced it, adding new layers to a relationship that had already been the most important thing in both their lives. Joe noticed immediately, of course. Parents develop an almost supernatural ability to detect shifts in their children's emotional weather, and the change in Barry and Iris was like watching storm clouds clear to reveal brilliant sunshine. He didn't say anything directly, but his satisfied smile over breakfast spoke volumes. The early days of their romantic relationship unfolded with the easy grace of two people who already knew each other's rhythms and preferences. They didn't have to navigate the awkward getting-to-know-you phase that most couples experience. They already knew Iris took her coffee with too much sugar and that Barry got lost in thought when working on complex problems. They knew each other's fears, dreams, pet peeves, and secret ambitions. What they had to learn was how to be romantic partners without losing the friendship that had sustained them both for so long. It was a delicate balance, adding physical affection and exclusive commitment to a relationship that had already been emotionally intimate for years. Their first official date was simultaneously their most natural interaction ever and their most nervous. Barry picked Iris up at her apartment, bringing flowers like he'd seen in movies, feeling ridiculous and wonderful at the same time. Iris answered the door in a dress he'd seen her wear to work functions, but somehow it looked completely different on her now, like she was glowing from within. They went to dinner at a restaurant downtown. Nothing too fancy, because they both preferred places where they could actually hear each other talk. The conversation flowed as easily as it always had, but now Barry could reach across the table to take Iris's hand without overthinking the gesture. Now, Iris could compliment the way Barry's eyes crinkled when he smiled without worrying about revealing too much. Walking back to the car after dinner, Barry suddenly stopped on the sidewalk, struck by the overwhelming realization that this was real, that Iris West had chosen him, that the woman he'd been in love with since he was old enough to understand what love meant was now officially, wonderfully, completely his. Iris noticed his pause and turned back, eyebrow raised in that questioning way he'd learned to read years ago. Instead of explaining with words, Barry pulled her close and kissed her right there on the busy sidewalk, with people walking around them and car horns honking in the distance. It was impulsive, in public, and absolutely perfect. When they broke apart, Iris was laughing, her cheeks flushed with happiness and mild embarrassment. "What was that for?" she asked, though her arms remained wrapped around his neck. "For being you," Barry said simply. "For being mine." The words were simple, but they carried the weight of years of friendship, months of unspoken longing, and a future full of possibilities neither of them could fully imagine yet. Their love story continued to unfold like pages in a book written by someone who understood that the best romances aren't built on grand gestures alone, but on the accumulation of small, perfect moments that create a tapestry of belonging. Spring arrived in Central City with the kind of gentle persistence that makes you believe in new beginnings. Barry and Iris had been officially together for 6 months, and their relationship had settled into a rhythm that felt both thrilling and wonderfully stable. They'd learned to navigate the delicate balance between the people they'd always been and the couple they were becoming. Barry's work at the forensic lab had gained recognition throughout the department. His methodical approach and genuine desire to help victims' families find closure made him invaluable to cases that had previously gone cold. He'd spend hours hunched over evidence, treating each piece like a conversation with the past, listening carefully to what it might reveal about truth and justice. Iris had made her mark at the newspaper with a series of investigative pieces that exposed corruption in city development projects. Her articles didn't just report facts, they told human stories, showing how political decisions affected real families trying to build better lives. Her editor had started giving her the assignments that mattered most, recognizing her ability to find the heart of every story. They'd developed new traditions that honored both their friendship and their romance. Sunday mornings belonged to lazy breakfasts and crossword puzzles, Barry's scientific precision balancing perfectly with Iris's intuitive leaps. Tuesday evenings were for cooking together, experimenting with recipes that often ended in laughter and takeout orders when their culinary ambitions exceeded their skills. Their apartment hunting had become a weekend adventure, though neither was in any rush to make a decision. They'd walk through spaces that could potentially become home, imagining where Barry's books would fit and how Iris's photographs would look on various walls. Each viewing was really an excuse to dream together, to picture the life they were building, one room at a time. Joe watched their relationship bloom with the quiet satisfaction of a man whose deepest hopes were being fulfilled. He'd raised them both to be good people, and seeing them choose each other felt like validation of everything he'd tried to teach them about love, loyalty, and the importance of building life on a foundation of genuine respect and affection. The first time they said, "I love you," happened on an ordinary Thursday evening in May. Barry was reading case files on the couch, while Iris worked on an article at the kitchen table, both comfortable in their separate tasks, but connected by the invisible thread that had always existed between them. Iris looked up from her laptop to find Barry watching her with an expression she'd never seen before, soft and wondering and slightly amazed. "What?" she asked, self-consciously touching her hair to see if something was wrong. "I love you," Barry said quietly, the words emerging without preamble or dramatic buildup. They sounded natural in the domestic quiet of the evening, as if he'd been saying them his entire life and was just now allowing her to hear. Iris felt her heart skip in the most cliched and wonderful way possible. She'd known, of course, just as he'd known about her feelings, but hearing the words spoken aloud transformed something essential in the space between them. Love acknowledged had a different quality than love merely felt. She closed her laptop and moved to the couch, settling beside him with the careful movements of someone trying not to disturb something precious. "I love you too," she said, her hand finding his cheek in a gesture that had become instinctive. "I think I always have." They held each other in the lamplight of their living room, two people who'd traveled the long road from friendship to romance and discovered that the destination was even better than they'd dared hope. Love hadn't diminished their friendship. It had illuminated it, revealing depths they'd never fully explored. Summer brought longer days, and the kind of heat that made Central City shimmer like a mirage. Barry and Iris had found an apartment they both adored, a second-floor place with hardwood floors and windows that caught the morning light perfectly. Moving in together felt less like a major life change and more like the next logical step in a journey they'd been taking together their entire lives. The process of combining their belongings revealed small intimacies they hadn't anticipated. Barry's systematic approach to organizing books by both author and publication date amused Iris, who preferred to arrange things by color and personal significance. Her collection of vintage cameras fascinated Barry, who'd never fully appreciated how each one represented a different way of seeing the world. They compromised on everything, with the ease of two people who genuinely liked each other's differences. Barry's scientific journals shared shelf space with Iris's literary magazines. Her grandmother's quilt draped over his favorite reading chair. Their combined music collection created playlists that surprised them both, jazz standards mixing with indie rock in combinations that somehow worked perfectly. Their housewarming party was really an excuse for Joe to officially approve of their living arrangement, though his approval had never been in question. He arrived with a bottle of champagne and a framed photograph of Barry and Iris as children, arms around each other's shoulders, grinning at the camera with the unconscious confidence of people who belong together. Barry's colleagues from the lab mingled with Iris's newspaper friends, creating conversations that bridged the gap between scientific precision and journalistic intuition. Everyone could see what Joe had recognized years earlier, that Barry and Iris fit together with the kind of natural harmony that made other couples slightly envious and deeply hopeful about the possibility of finding that kind of connection themselves. Late that night, after the last guest had gone home and the dishes were washed and put away, Barry and Iris sat on their new balcony, watching the city lights twinkle below them. The air was warm and still, carrying the distant sounds of traffic and laughter from nearby restaurants. Iris had changed into one of Barry's old college t-shirts, her feet tucked up beneath her, on the chair he'd claimed as his reading spot. Barry sat on the balcony railing, one foot braced against the floor, looking completely at ease in their new space. "This feels right," Iris said quietly, gesturing at the apartment behind them. The city spread out below, the comfortable silence they'd learned to share. All of it. Us, living together, building this life. It feels like what we were always supposed to be doing. Barry nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. They'd never had to force anything between them, never had to pretend to be different people to make their relationship work. Love had grown naturally from friendship. Romance had bloomed from genuine affection. And now they were creating a home together with the same organic ease that had characterized every stage of their connection. "I keep waiting for it to feel strange," Barry admitted, living together, being a couple instead of just friends. But it doesn't. It feels like the most natural thing in the world. Iris smiled, reaching for his hand where it rested on the railing. Their fingers intertwined automatically, a gesture they'd performed thousands of times, but which still sent warmth spreading through both of them. Maybe because we've been practicing for this our whole lives, without realizing it. They talked until well past midnight, sharing dreams for their future that ranged from practical to fantastical. Barry wanted to modernize the police lab's equipment, to bring cutting-edge technology to Central City's fight against crime. Iris dreamed of writing articles that would make a real difference, stories that would inspire people to care about their community and work for positive change. Both of them wanted children someday, though they were in no hurry. They could imagine little feet running through their apartment, bedtime stories read in voices that combined Joe's patient wisdom with their own hopes for the next generation. But for now, they were content to build their foundation, to learn each other's rhythms as romantic partners, to create the kind of love that would be strong enough to support a family when the time came. Fall arrived with the crisp promise of change, painting the city in shades of gold and amber that made even the most ordinary moments feel touched with magic. Barry and Iris had been living together for 4 months, and their relationship had deepened in ways that surprised them both. They'd learned that Barry was grumpier in the mornings than either of them had expected, requiring at least 1 cup of coffee before he became fully human. Iris discovered she talked in her sleep, usually carrying on detailed conversations with sources for articles she was working on. These small revelations felt precious rather than annoying, intimate details that belonged only to them. Their work had become more intertwined as Barry's forensic expertise occasionally intersected with Iris's investigative journalism. She'd call him with questions about evidence analysis, and he'd help her understand the scientific aspects of stories she was covering. They were careful to maintain professional boundaries, but their different perspectives often led to insights neither would have reached alone. The autumn Barry would later remember as the season everything changed began like any other. He was working on a particularly complex case involving trace evidence that seemed to defy logical explanation. The samples showed properties that shouldn't have been possible, given known scientific principles, and Barry found himself staying late at the lab more frequently, chasing theories that led nowhere. Iris was deep into an investigation about illegal chemical dumping that had been affecting Central City's water supply. Her research had uncovered a web of corporate negligence and regulatory failure that went deeper than anyone suspected. She'd been receiving anonymous tips that seemed legitimate, but came from sources she couldn't verify. They'd meet at home in the evenings, both exhausted but energized by their respective work, sharing takeout dinners while debriefing each other about cases they couldn't solve and stories they couldn't quite crack. Neither of them realized they were both circling the same truth from different directions. The night that changed everything started like any other. Barry was working alone in the lab, analyzing samples under a microscope that had seen better days, when a storm rolled in from the west. Central City was used to dramatic weather, but this system felt different. The air pressure dropped suddenly, making his ears pop, and the fluorescent lights began to flicker in a pattern that seemed almost rhythmic. He'd been so focused on his work that he didn't notice the storm's intensity until lightning illuminated the lab windows in stark, brilliant flashes. The thunder that followed seemed to shake the entire building, and Barry made a mental note to check the equipment for damage once the weather passed. What happened next would become the defining moment of his life, though he wouldn't understand its significance for months to come. A bolt of lightning struck the building's power grid just as Barry was reaching for a chemical solution, and the resulting electrical surge created a chain reaction that science would struggle to explain. The lab filled with light, brighter than anything Barry had ever experienced, and he felt electricity course through his body in ways that should have been fatal. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously, and he had the strange sensation of being both completely still and moving faster than thought. When consciousness returned, Barry found himself on the lab floor, with Iris kneeling beside him, her face pale with worry and streaked with tears he didn't remember seeing her shed. Paramedics were checking his vital signs, their voices professional, but tinged with confusion about how he'd survived what should have been a lethal electrical shock. "Hey," Iris whispered when she saw his eyes open, her hand finding his with desperate relief. "You scared me. Don't you ever do that again." Barry tried to sit up, surprised to find that he felt not just fine, but remarkably energetic, as if he'd been sleeping for weeks and was finally fully rested. The paramedics wanted to take him to the hospital for observation, but all their tests showed normal results. His heart rate was steady, his brain activity typical, his reflexes perhaps even sharper than usual. Iris insisted on taking him home, and Barry was grateful for her protective instincts. He felt different in ways he couldn't articulate, hyper-aware of sounds and movements that had never registered before. The drive home seemed to take forever, though Iris wasn't driving particularly slowly. Over the following days, Barry began to notice changes that defied rational explanation. His reflexes had become impossibly fast. His mind processed information at speeds that left him feeling disconnected from normal conversation. He could read entire books in minutes, solve complex equations almost instinctively, and move with a grace and speed that felt supernatural. At first, he convinced himself he was imagining things, that the electrical shock had somehow heightened his senses temporarily. But when he accidentally ran from their apartment to the lab in what felt like seconds, covering a distance that should have taken 20 minutes, he could no longer deny that something fundamental had changed. The hardest part wasn't adjusting to his new abilities. It was figuring out how to tell Iris without sounding like he'd lost his mind. How do you explain to the person you love most that you've somehow become something beyond normal human limitations? How do you share a secret that could change everything between you when the relationship is the most important thing in your life? Barry spent sleepless nights watching Iris sleep, marveling at how peaceful she looked, how completely she trusted him, even when he was keeping the biggest secret of his life from her. He knew she could sense something was different, could see the questions in her eyes when she thought he wasn't looking, but she was giving him space to tell her in his own time. The decision to reveal his abilities came not from courage, but from necessity. Iris was walking home from the newspaper late one evening when Barry's enhanced senses detected danger she couldn't perceive. A group of men had been following her for 3 blocks, their intentions clearly predatory, and Barry knew she wouldn't reach safety at her normal pace. He moved without thinking, crossing the city in a blur of motion that left the evening air shimmering behind him. By the time Iris's would-be attackers realized what was happening, Barry had already ensured her safety, leaving the men confused and empty-handed in an alley several blocks away. Iris found Barry waiting by their apartment building, breathing hard, not from exertion, but from the emotional weight of what he'd just revealed about himself. She looked at him with wide eyes, her journalist's instincts immediately recognizing that something extraordinary had just occurred. "Barry," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the questions clearly racing through her mind. "We need to talk." They climbed the stairs to their apartment in silence, both understanding that they were about to have a conversation that would define the rest of their relationship. Barry had no idea how to explain what he'd become, but he knew that Iris deserved the truth, no matter how impossible it might sound. They sat facing each other on their couch, the familiar comfort of their living room somehow feeling different, now that secrets hung in the air between them. Barry's hands trembled slightly as he tried to find the right words, while Iris waited with the patient focus she'd perfected through years of interviewing reluctant sources. "The night of the storm," Barry began, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something happened to me in the lab, something that shouldn't be possible according to everything I know about science and human biology." He paused, studying her face for any sign of disbelief or fear, but found only the gentle attention she'd always given him when he needed to work through complex problems. I can move faster than should be humanly possible, he continued, the words feeling strange and wonderful and terrifying as they left his lips. Not just a little faster, Iris. I can run across the entire city in seconds. I can think at speeds that make normal conversation feel like it's happening underwater. I can see and hear things that are happening blocks away. Iris absorbed this information with the same careful consideration she brought to every story that seemed too extraordinary to be true. She'd learned long ago that the most impossible-sounding claims often contained kernels of truth that, once properly understood, made perfect sense within a larger context. "Show me," she said simply, her voice carrying no judgment, only curiosity and love. Barry stood up slowly, moving to the center of their living room. He looked at Iris one more time, seeking permission to fundamentally change her understanding of what was possible in the world. When she nodded encouragingly, he let his abilities flow freely for the first time since that night in the lab. He moved around their apartment at speeds that should have created sonic booms, but instead generated only a gentle breeze that ruffled the papers on Iris's desk. In the span of what felt like minutes to him, but was actually microseconds, he organized their bookshelf alphabetically, folded the laundry they'd left in the basket for 3 days, and prepared 2 cups of coffee exactly the way they both preferred. When he stopped moving, Barry found himself back where he'd started, breathing normally despite having accomplished hours' worth of tasks in the time it took Iris to blink. The apartment around them was transformed, everything in its proper place. The scent of fresh coffee filling the air, like evidence of impossible efficiency. Iris looked around their newly organized home, then back at Barry, her expression cycling through amazement, understanding, and finally, a smile that held years of unconditional acceptance. "My boyfriend is the fastest man alive," she said, testing the words as if they were a new language she was learning to speak fluently. "Are you okay with that?" Barry asked, vulnerability clear in his voice, despite the incredible power he'd just demonstrated. All the speed in the universe meant nothing if it cost him the one person who made him feel completely human. Iris stood up and crossed to him, her movements normal and beautiful in their ordinary pace. She reached up to cup his face in her hands, her touch grounding him to the moment in a way that no amount of speed could replicate. "Barry Allen," she said, her voice filled with the same love that had been growing between them since childhood. "I fell in love with your heart, not your abilities. This doesn't change who you are. It just means you can help people in ways we never imagined." They held each other in their transformed living room. 2 people whose love story had just expanded to include elements that belonged in science fiction novels, but felt completely natural within the context of their relationship. Barry had been terrified that his new abilities would create distance between them. But instead, they seemed to have deepened Iris's understanding of who he'd always been at his core. The weeks that followed brought new challenges and discoveries as Barry learned to navigate life with abilities that defied every law of physics he'd studied. Iris became his anchor, helping him understand that power without purpose was just elaborate party tricks, but power used to protect and serve could change the world. She was there when he made his first tentative attempts at using his speed to help others, catching purse snatchers and preventing accidents with the kind of precise intervention that left witnesses wondering if they'd imagined the blur of red that had appeared and disappeared in moments. Iris documented everything with her journalist's eye for detail, helping Barry understand the broader implications of what he was becoming. Their relationship evolved to accommodate this new reality with the same natural grace that had characterized every other transition in their lives together. Iris learned to recognize the subtle signs that Barry was about to use his abilities. The slight shift in his posture that preceded movement faster than human eyes could follow. Barry learned to slow down his thoughts when talking with Iris, to resist the urge to finish her sentences, even though he could process her words before she'd fully formed them. They developed new codes and signals for public situations where Barry might need to act quickly without revealing his abilities to bystanders. A touch on his arm meant she'd noticed something he should investigate. A specific phrase, worked into casual conversation, indicated that she'd spotted potential trouble through her journalist's trained observation skills. Joe noticed the change in their dynamic before they told him about Barry's abilities, though he attributed their new closeness to the natural deepening that occurs in strong relationships. He saw how they seemed to communicate without words, how they'd developed an almost telepathic understanding of each other's thoughts and needs. When they finally sat Joe down to explain what had happened that night in the lab, he listened with the same calm acceptance he'd shown throughout their childhood when they'd come to him with problems that seemed insurmountable. His first question wasn't about the science or the implications for Barry's career, but about their relationship and how they were handling this extraordinary change together. "You two have always taken care of each other," Joe said, after Barry had demonstrated his abilities with the same careful revelation he'd shown Iris weeks earlier. "I guess now you just have some extra tools to work with." His practical acceptance of the impossible reflected the wisdom of a man who'd learned that love could adapt to any circumstance if it was built on a strong enough foundation. Winter settled over Central City with the kind of gentle persistence that makes you appreciate warm homes and shared blankets. Barry had been using his abilities to help people for several months now, though his actions remained largely invisible to the general public. He preferred it that way, finding satisfaction in the knowledge that he'd prevented crimes and accidents without seeking recognition or acclaim. And so their story continues, woven through the quiet moments between heartbeats, in the space where time slows down and love expands to fill every corner of possibility. Barry learned that true speed isn't about how fast you can run, but about knowing when to stop. Iris discovered that the greatest stories aren't always the ones that make headlines, but the ones whispered between two people who choose each other every single day. As you drift off tonight, carry with you the gentle truth that love like theirs exists in the world. It grows in ordinary places, blooms in patient seasons, and reminds us that some connections transcend time itself. Sweet dreams, wherever you are.